Welcome to Life Outside the Default. Today, I'm your guest, Asia Dore, and I am a brand strategist. I help entrepreneurs brand themselves as experts.
Thank you so much, Asia, for being here today. So your business as a brand strategist kind of happened by accident. Can you tell us how does something like that happen by accident?
It did. So I started my business as a photographer, which was also kind of an accident. I really just picked up a camera. I was super into it. People started asking me how much I charge, and the light bulb moment went off. It was like, oh, this could be a business. So I was a photographer since 2014. And then in 2020-ish, after I had pivoted to brand photography and specialized in that, I realized that the brand strategy was actually the most exciting part of my work as a photographer. So in 2020, when the world was wild and we were all questioning everything, I decided to drop the photography and just strictly focus on the brand strategy.
Was there something that kind of gave you like, okay, I can do this. I can go from photography to brand strategy? Because that seems like quite a different type of field.
Does feel really different. I think having that bridge of knowing that in order to deliver really solid brand photos, I needed to make sure strategy was part of my work because my clients, even though they were really brilliant at what they did, or they were creating really beautiful, high quality products, whatever their business was, they were really good at it. But when I asked them to describe their brand to me, they simply couldn't do it. They were like, I don't know, blues and greens. And I'm like, that's not a brand. Those are just colors. So we need to really get to the root of this, because if I don't understand your brand, then I cannot create photographs that represent it. So it didn't feel like a big jump. What was difficult, though, was the identity shift that I had to go through to kind of give myself permission to do this new thing. Because I'm not classically trained, quote unquote, in brand strategy. I didn't go to college for brand strategy. Actually, I dropped out of college because I couldn't decide what I wanted to do with my life. So I'm super unqualified on paper to be doing what I'm doing. But through the process of just life experience, business experience, building my own brand, and then realizing I was already helping other entrepreneurs build theirs, it was really just a matter of figuring out okay, if I now want to be known for something different, because I had already built my brand on the service of photography, what do I literally need to do? What actions do I need to take so that people start to recognize me as a brand strategist instead of as a photographer? So how do I need to switch my messaging around? What do I need to change on my website? How do I need to communicate with people so that they really understand what it is that I do? And so just the process of doing that, moving through that, is kind of what gave me permission to do it, to have that identity shift. It's really hard to do any sort of pivot in life or business, especially when we feel unqualified. We're waiting for someone to come down and say, okay, well, the committee has granted you permission to do this. And we're like, oh, okay, thank you. But that doesn't happen. At a certain point, you just have to recognize oh, I'm really good at this and I like doing it. So I'm just going to do it. I'm going to crown myself. And so that's what I did.
There was something I read. I want to say it was a musician. Don't quote me. I can't remember a name, but he wasn't trained in the official way that musicians are, like through college. And his music actually turned out to be better. I don't want to say better. Better might not be the right word. It was more unique. That's the word. It was more unique. And he related it to the fact that he didn't go through all of the same training and thought process that majority of his peers did. So sometimes being a little bit unofficial, I think, can have an edge or an advantage over competitors.
I am so glad you mentioned that. And of course, the name also escapes me, but there's a filmmaker, really famous filmmaker, who that happened to too. And those shots that he kind of created are studied now in film schools, but he only came up with them because he was like, I didn't know what to do, so I just tried some stuff. So I think there really is a lot of value in kind of choosing your own path, and even teaching yourself. I mean, there's so much knowledge available for free everywhere, or paid, right? You don't have to go to a four-year college just to learn how to do something now. And to be able to utilize that, and to be able to think about doing the same thing everyone else is doing, but in a new way because you approached it your own way. I think there's so much value in that, and it's really important, especially like I said at the beginning, I work with entrepreneurs who are experts and they're trying to position themselves as authorities. I think that when we can leverage the fact that we do what we do differently, that's going to be a really good way to stand out. So I'm so glad that you mentioned that.
So branding's not colors. What is branding? How would you describe it?
So a brand is just your reputation, like at its very core. It's how people feel about you. It's what they think about you. It's the little spot that you take up in their brain. And so your branding then is everything that you say and do and share and create that shapes that reputation. So the first thing you have to figure out is, okay, what do I want to be known for? And then what do I have to go do and put out into the world in order to become known for that thing? The colors are, of course, part of your branding, right? Your visual brand identity is a part of your brand, but first you have to know what that reputation is before you can visualize it.
So it's not just about the logo, but actually how you present yourself in your
Exactly.
industry. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. And again, the logo is important. Good design is important, especially, in the modern world where we're all on the internet all the time and we're literally looking at things. So the visuals are important, but like if you work with a designer, make sure that the strategy is a core piece of the work that they do, because otherwise they're just going to be creating pretty stuff for you that has no strategy behind it.
What's included in a strategy?
That depends on the strategist that you work with.
Okay.
because because brand strategy really does apply to all businesses. Brand strategy applies to anything that you want to brand. It doesn't matter who or where or what you're branding. Brand strategy always applies. But it's also going to depend on the type of brand strategist you're working with on what they think are the most important things. So for me, there's 11 core parts of a brand strategy that you really need, which is number one, your brand philosophy, which is basically your big idea. Like, what is the point of any of this? How do we kind of wrap it up into a bow? Number two is your brand purpose. The reason your business exists beyond just making money, right? Because the making money part is an important part of business, but what what kind of impact are we making beyond that? Your brand mission, which is like a very specific measurable end goal for your business. Like if you could achieve this, that would allow you to close your business down, which to a lot of people is like, oh, well, I don't want to close my business. My business is how I make money. But business also solves problems, right? And there are like billions of problems. So if you were able to achieve your mission, that means that problem had been solved and you can move on to the next problem. Also, your brand message, which is really just the simple, straightforward thing you want everyone to know. This is the thing I think most entrepreneurs struggle with is how do I distill everything that I want to say and that I know and that I can say into one specific message. And if you're having a hard time doing that, work with a brand strategist. Your brand values are included in these 11 components, which are really just like the morals and the ideals that dictate how you do business. Your brand values will also probably be very close, if not the same as your actual personal real life values. Your brand personality is really what gives your business soul. It's the thing that people are actually going to connect with in terms of you not just being a business, but being an entity that they actually feel connected to. Along with that comes brand voice, which is really just the character that comes across in your communication, whether you are writing or speaking. Your brand story is the narrative that helps your audience connect with your business on an emotional level because it allows them to put themselves into your business, into the result that you're providing, into the promise that you are delivering on. Your brand value proposition is really what sets you apart from everyone else offering the exact same product or service as you. So, how are you doing what you do differently? And that's a really fun thing to know because then you realize you don't actually have competition. because you know what makes you different. Number 10, your ideal client profile. Everyone hates doing ideal client work because it's like, oh, I have to invent this person in my head. And it's just like a weird avatar thing. And I'm tired of doing the worksheets. But at the end of the day, if you're going to sell to someone, you have to know who they are. You have to know, more importantly, who they want to be. Because when you know that, you know how your product or service helps them become who they want to be. And then lastly is just your brand transformation, which is all about the evolution of your client, who they are before working with you and who they become after working with you. Like, what are they able to feel? What are they able to do? Who are they able to be now that their problem is solved? So to me, those are the 11 things that a really solid brand strategy needs to have. And again, that applies regardless of who or where or what you're branding.
That's definitely a lot more to it than I anticipated.
It's very in depth. And that's, you can get away with the most important, quote unquote, important parts of those. But I believe that if you really want your strongest brand strategy so that you can make the most profit and the most impact, it is worth figuring all of that stuff out.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very in depth. So I'm wondering, when you have a smaller business, a lot of people starting out, it's a one man or one woman show initially getting started if they're an entrepreneur and they're trying to do everything themselves. How important with branding is it that they have like a beautiful Instagram or a beautiful Facebook? Because you look at some of these pages and it's all gorgeous, beautiful colors, all the coloring matches and the themes. Does that really matter?
Some cases it might. It depends on what you are selling and it depends on who your client is and it depends on the platform you're marketing on. I'm not a marketing expert, but as an example, when I first started marketing my business on Instagram, it was like 2016, back when Instagram was fun and we had the chronological timeline and we
I
actually
miss
saw
those
the
days.
posts we wanted to see. I don't even think there was video yet. Uh, and back then, the aesthetics of a feed were very important because that was sort of the way that people found and interacted with you. Today, aesthetics don't really seem to matter at all because people aren't using Instagram in the way that they used to. Now we have the infinite scroll. Now we have the reels. Now we have people using the app a lot more for entertainment than connection. So I just use Instagram as an example because platforms change. And so before you get too caught up in, okay, I have to make this pretty and perfect, I think it makes sense to research the platform itself, figure out how people are using it, figure out what the goal of it is for you using it for your business. And from then you can decide, okay, how important is the visual part of this? That being said, I think that having a cohesive visual presence helps in terms of building authority. It makes you look professional and like you have your shit together. It's also just more appealing to look at when things look professional and clean and nice. So I would say it is important in terms of people figuring out what you do easily, figuring out whether you are relevant to them easily. That's the most important part. It's not just, oh, I'm going to go to Asia Dore's website and look around and see, and oh, this is pretty. Like, no one's thinking that, right? They go to Asia Dore's website because they're like, is this a brand strategist for me? Like, what does Asia do? Is this relevant to me? And having it clean and pretty looking can help them stick around and because it's legible. But at the end of the day, we just want to make it easy for people to either hire us or not hire us.
That makes sense. It's more about the message you're sending and what you're offering. That's what I'm picking up from what you're saying.
Yes, that is a very short way to say what I just said in a very long way.
I kind of feel like I'm slightly confusing marketing and branding because I'd asked about the appearance of an Instagram page and you referenced that more as marketing. So is that considered more marketing or branding, or is it kind of an overlap?
It's definitely an overlap, so it's makes sense to be confused. Even I'm confused about it sometimes, and this is like what I do. But again, we'd go back to that very simple definition of a brand, which is your reputation. Branding is everything you put out into the world to shape that reputation. My favorite definition of marketing is just telling people how you can help them. So naturally, there's going to be some overlap because the way that you tell people how you can help them is branding, how you tell them, where you tell them, but it's also marketing. so, getting back to those really simple definitions, it always helps me in terms of like, what type of content is this? Is this marketing content? Is it just brand awareness? Am I selling something? Having those simple definitions keeps it straight.
I read on your website maybe that you don't really recommend people like niching down, which I found interesting. And correct me if I'm paraphrasing that wrong, but I found that interesting because I hear so much like you have to niche and then niche down further and niche down further and get really small with your niche. Do you think that's a good approach, or do you have a different look on that?
Not necessarily anti-niching. I think that niching can be beneficial because it forces us to get specific, and specificity is really, really the key to having a solid brand strategy. So, when we talk about niching, what we mean is appealing to or talking to a target market. So if I'm niching to, um, busy school teachers who are aged 32 to 42 and they live in Chicago, like that's a niche, right? But the problem then with niching is it doesn't give us very much insight into the psychology of who that person is. It also, I think, sometimes makes our messaging specific in kind of the wrong ways because our products or services often help more than just one really niche target market. And if we only message to that niche target market, we are missing out on the people who could also benefit from us who aren't necessarily the school teacher in Chicago. And so instead of niching, what I think is a lot more valuable is positioning. So instead of focusing on the target market, what we're focusing on is how we solve our problem, how we solve a problem, and how we solve it differently than everybody else. Because when we can figure that out, that opens up our messaging a little bit more in terms of the market who is receptive to our message.
So kind of advertising the solution that you're offering.
Yes. The solution that you're offering, also the problems that your client is experiencing without necessarily focusing on their demographics, but more focusing on their psychology. What are they frustrated by? What are they scared of? What are they motivated by? What do they want? Who do they want to become? Again, how does your product or service help them become that person? So it's nuanced, right? And again, niching isn't necessarily bad, but I think that the way we're taught to niche can force us to be specific, which is good, but also force us to be specific in sort of the wrong or an unhelpful way. Focusing more on positioning, I think, could be a lot more helpful, especially if you are new in business where you're really trying to figure this stuff out. Like, okay, what am I doing? who am I trying to find? What do I need to say to them? Like, you really need to answer those questions. So focusing on the positioning aspect of it can, I think, be a lot more helpful. I feel like that was not a super actionable answer, which I don't love because I really like to have actionable answers. But you tell me if that's making sense.
It does, and it sounds like because of the nuance that there comes with that, it kind of could depend on situation to situation and what the entrepreneur is focusing on for their business. It doesn't sound like you could just give a blanket answer that would apply to everybody.
Yes, the annoying answer is it depends.
The famous words.
Yes, it depends. Niching is not necessarily bad, but when you can focus more on positioning and how you solve the problem that you solve instead of focusing too much on who you solve it for from a demographics standpoint, I think it can make for a lot more powerful message.
If somebody sets up their business with a specific branding or style, and then a couple years down the road, they're getting a little bit more clarity around their clients or maybe even what they want to offer. What are your thoughts on going through a rebrand? Is that something they could do? Does it negatively impact their business?
No, I'd say anytime you feel like you have outgrown or evolved past what you've already created, like let it go. I know it's hard. It feels like you're quitting. It feels like you're abandoning, especially if you worked really hard to create the thing you created. I get it. I've been there, but it's so much better to just move on. Rebranding is a spicy subject for me because I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs think they need to rebrand and they don't. All they need to do is like refresh their visuals or like get professional headshots or you know their brand isn't actually changing. It's just how they're representing their brand online might be changing or evolving or growing. So it's not necessarily bad to rebrand, but I just don't want to put the message out there that you should just burn it all down and start from scratch every time you get like an inkling to or a change or you feel like this isn't exciting anymore, so I'm going to do this other thing. Just kind of like pause and make sure that what you actually need to do is rebrand. I'll use myself as an example here. I completely switched industries, right, from photography to consulting, essentially, and I did not have to rebrand. And the reason I didn't have to rebrand is because the Asia Dore brand was essentially the same. The service I was offering had changed slightly, but I still had the same, essentially the same mission, especially pivoting from brand photography to brand strategy. I still wanted to help entrepreneurs position themselves as experts. My values hadn't changed. My personality hadn't changed. I guess my message did slightly change. Cool thing about developing your brand strategy early on and getting those 11 foundational things figured out early on is that it's a lot easier to adjust moving forward instead of feeling like you need to just start from scratch. So I had an audience as a photographer, obviously, that I had spent 6 or 7 years building my business as a photographer, but it was really easy to pivot. I was basically just like, hey guys, I'm doing this now. You're welcome to come with me. If this isn't relevant, like, see you later. Thanks for hanging out while I was a photographer. And I mean, I got a lot of support and a lot of people did stick around, most of them. I also had people who never bought from me when I was a photographer who now wanted to work with me because I was offering something that was actually relevant to them. So if you are in a position where you feel like you need to evolve, use the word rebrand very carefully. Don't feel like you have to burn everything down. It might be a lot easier to pivot than you think if you just make a few small tweaks, but then at the same time, balanced with be okay with letting the old stuff go so that you're able to evolve into the new beautiful butterfly you're becoming.
Which is so hard to do sometimes because it's your little baby plant that you've cultivated and watch it grow. And then now you're like, okay, send
Well,
you
it's
out on your
also
own.
like it's an identity thing too, because it's like that's you. For me, it was like, but I am a photographer. I can't just not be a photographer anymore.
Right.
And obviously, I do still feel like a photographer because I know how to do it, right? But the identity shift can really be difficult too. But it's sort of, I think, better to look at it as like a yes and situation. Like I can be this new thing and also be this old thing at the same time, like inside, right?
Right. That's a great point. So, from all of your years working in your brand field, what's one thing, if you had to pick one thing, that you wish kind of everybody could know or should know?
I wish that people knew how simple branding was. I think the mainstream industry loves to overcomplicate it. They love to put out a bunch of information that's just like corporate jargon, right? Which is not necessarily wrong. But when we try to apply the corporate branding principles to our small businesses, there's a disconnect. when we say like, oh, you should brand your business like McDonald's or Starbucks or Apple. Okay, yes, those are recognizable, profitable brands, but they also have so much money to throw at their branding to basically manipulate our perceptions and make us think about their brand however they want us to think about their brand, right?
Yes.
As small business owners, we don't have that luxury of money. So we have to do it the genuine way. We have to build our reputation based on actual authenticity and genuine conversation and showing up and being the person that we want people to see us as. And so when you look up information, how to brand your business, if you Google that, you're going to find all these blog posts that talk about the McDonald's and the Starbucks and the Apple. And they're going to talk about all of the corporate rules for branding, which again are not necessarily wrong, but it really is so simple to build a brand. And that's what I wish that more people knew. Can I tell you how simple it is?
Please.
Okay, there's just like literally only 5 steps. Not easy, but simple. The first step is you have to figure out exactly what it is that you do. Seems easy, right? But if you're multi-passionate or if you're offering a bunch of different things or if you have all these ideas for business, it can be kind of hard to narrow it down. And it's not about choosing just one thing. It's about taking everything and then packaging up in a way that means one thing to your ideal clients so that again, they know immediately, is this person relevant to me? Is what this person's selling relevant to me? So that's step number 1. Step number 2 is you have to figure out who you do it for. And yes, that's your ideal client. We already talked about the resistance to ideal client work, but we got to know who it is that we're selling to. Our brands are built by us, but they're built for our ideal clients. So we got to know who they are. Number 3 is how you do what you do differently than everybody else who's doing the same thing as you. And the secret to that is typically your signature method, right? Your frameworks that you have created that apply regardless of how you're helping your clients. You always sort of work within this methodology or framework. Number 4 is to figure out why any of it matters. Beyond making money, like what are we here to do? Because the purpose of a business is to make money, but the purpose of a brand is to create impact. So we got to know then what kind of impact do we want to make so that we can reverse engineer when it comes to designing our business model, our offers, the way we work with clients, but also our branding. And then lastly, you have to take all of those things and create a message and then go talk about it, go do the marketing, go tell people that you can help them and how you can help them, and then do it over and over and over and over again until you're absolutely bored, and then you keep doing it forever. Those are the 5 steps to branding. It's so simple.
That is actually pretty simple, especially when you break it down into a nice little strategy like that. When you're sharing the same message over and over again, how can you do that in a way that you don't feel like you're just saying the same 2 sentences to your clients? Because I would feel like I'm just beating a dead horse after a little while.
Sure. I mean, sometimes you do literally say the same thing over and over again. And I think the important thing to remember is that no one is paying as much attention to your business as you are, right? Fortunately or unfortunately. We're all busy. The internet is noisy. We got stuff going on. We're not obsessing over your last post and reading it over and over again like you did, right? We're like
That's
glancing at
true.
it. And if it's not relevant, we're moving on. The thing about having a core brand message that's really simple and hopefully concise is that it allows you to expand on that using things like your brand values, your story, your brand story, using storytelling to share your message, your personality, your voice, your ideal client transformation, right? All of those things that are in a solid brand strategy are going to help you expand on your message so that, yes, you're saying the same thing over and over again, but you're saying it in different ways from different angles, using different facts or stories or data or words. Like sometimes I'll usually just like literally go to a thesaurus.com or any of the thesaurus sites to be like, what's another word I can use for this? Right? But at the end of the day, we want to make sure we are saying the same thing. And that's why having that core brand message is so helpful.
Keeping that consistency, it sounds like.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
because consistency is what builds a brand.
And that's a great reminder. Nobody else is obsessing over a post the same way that we are.
I know. Unless it's like your mom, shout out to the moms, our number one
Yes.
fans. But yeah, they're really not. And so the easier we can make it for people to know, is this relevant to me or not, the better. Because the things that catch their attention, yes, this could help me. Those are the posts that people are going to actually read all the way through. Those are the videos people are going to watch till the end. And we can't do that again unless we have that message that's consistent, and also unless we know who the ideal client is.
Yeah. Providing something of value in those posts.
Yes.
Switching gears just a little bit, going back to your photography days, there was a moment where you had a pivotal point and you wrote, I believe it was your first blog post. Would you like to tell us that story?
I would love to tell that story. It's actually, Cameron, I don't think it was my first blog post, because I think I had been blogging like sessions at the time, because I
Okay.
was using blogging as a marketing tool. But I do think it was my first post where it wasn't just about my work. So the post is still up too. You can go find it on my website. So when I was a photographer, I went through a phase where I was doing family portraits. I lived in a very small town. There were a lot of families there. So that was the work I was getting. So I was like, okay, we're going to do this, even though it didn't super interest me. I didn't have kids. I didn't want kids. But despite that, pretty much at every session, someone would say to me, well, when are you guys going to have kids? When are you going to have kids? And sometimes I was just like, laugh it off, like, haha, I don't know. But I got to the point where I did this one extended family session, and it was just a bad session. It was frustrating. The clients were rude. I wasn't having it, and I got asked that question. And again, I kind of laughed it off. But when I went home, I was like, you know what? I'm done laughing it off. I'm done laughing off this question. It's such an unreasonable question to ask someone, especially someone that you don't know that well. They're just like, they're doing work for you. It's just an inappropriate personal question. And so I went home and I wrote a blog post about basically like, just stop asking us this question as women or men, honestly, just stop asking people when they're going to have kids. And I just ranted, ranted, ranted. And I got so much positive feedback on that post, not only from people, from child-free women like me, but also from like other moms my age, from men, right? Just everybody. And I realized that it wasn't really like, the blog post wasn't actually about being child-free. It wasn't actually about stop asking people when they're going to have kids. What it was really about was values. It was really about um, finding a common ground, a common thread of people who agreed that we should be able to be independent from what society is demanding of us, and that we should feel confident in that independence. Like, that's really what the blog post was about. And so the reason it got so much positive feedback is because people were relating to that part of it, not the child-free part of it, which was just hugely eye-opening for me from a brand standpoint, because at that point, brand strategy was not even on my radar. I had been a photographer for like 2 years. I was like, I'm going to do this forever. But it was really helpful for me building my own brand, because I learned how valuable it was to share stories, to share rants, to share content based in values instead of just talking about my product or service, because that's what was going to attract my ideal clients, because we shared those values. So it was helpful from the perspective of me feeling more confident in my decision to be child free, and like not caring who knows it. But it was also helpful from the angle of learning, like, oh, this is how you build a brand, is by having values and then sharing them so that those people can connect with you on that level.
It takes guts to be vulnerable like that sometimes, especially when you're putting it out in a blog post. You don't know who's going to read it, and you're not even there to see their reaction, but to be able to just speak freely and be like, this is how I feel, really takes some guts. But obviously it worked out really well, and like you said, it attracted your people to you, or even people that weren't child free, but just were like, yeah, I want to live life on my terms.
Exactly. You mentioned vulnerability, and I think that is such an important topic, especially if you are building a personal brand and you want people to connect with you, not just as a business, but also as a person, because vulnerability is such a tricky subject. And I think a lot of people struggle with, like, okay, well, if I'm building this personal brand, if I'm putting my personality into it, like, how much of myself do I show? How much of myself do I actually put into this versus how much do I just keep it about business? And again, the answer is it depends, right? It depends on where I don't want to say where your comfort zone is, because I think there's a big difference between sharing something that's uncomfortable and sharing something that just feels like icky and wrong and like kind of not intuitive. But when you are able to experiment strategically by having a solid brand strategy, so you know the things that you should be sharing, when you have that, you can experiment strategically with it. Okay, I'm going to share this story and see how it feels, see what kind of feedback I get, see if it feels uncomfortable in terms of expanding comfort zone, or if it just feels icky and I don't want to talk about that sort of thing in my business, right? Because it's going to completely depend. But I think the best advice I can give in that circumstance is whenever you share something, have an end goal, but know exactly how what you're sharing is going to benefit other people. Because again, that's the point of the brand, is for other people, right? So if you're sharing something just to like get it out, like maybe use a journal or like voice memo your best friend instead.
Yeah.
But if there's a point to what you're sharing beyond just personal gain or personal validation or personal release or whatever it is, then it's probably going to benefit your audience. But again, knowing who they are and knowing who they want to be is going to help you figure out, it's going to help you filter, should I share this vulnerable thing? Is it actually going to help my ideal client? Or do I just feel like I need to share it because I need to get more personal?
In the past, I haven't been afraid to say that I'm child free or don't want kids unless I'm speaking to a parent. I've always felt weird because I'm like, I don't want them to feel like I'm saying something negative about their decision to have kids. So I've always shied away just kind of that whole topic if I'm talking to another parent, even, friends of mine, not super, super close friends, because the ones that are really close to me know my feelings, but, your friends that, you hang out with occasionally, I'll just kind of shy away from that. But more recently, and I think it's probably thanks to my husband a little bit because he's very vocal about not wanting children, is giving me the confidence to be like, it's okay to say, I don't want kids. Like, and it's okay to say that to a parent. And then, again, it's a lot about tone, and I'm not going to say it like in a nasty way to them. But if they ask me, you know, do you guys have kids, if they don't know us that well, or do you want to have kids? Like, no, I don't. No, and I don't want them. Like, or I'll say something like, no, we don't have kids, and thank God, like, we're trying not to, or something to kind of like lighten it up a little bit. So I really appreciate that you were able to just kind of like share that so openly in the past.
It definitely, like, it was a journey to get to that point of confidence. And I think one of the reasons that conversation is so hard with our peers who are parents is because of I mean, your audience is going to get this as soon as I say it, but like all of the like, oh, but you don't know love until you've had a kid and you'd be such a good mom and who's going to take care of you when you're old, and all of those, like, we have list upon list of the responses. And I think that that has taught us to just keep our mouths shut about it, because I think that like part of it is probably like, oh, I don't want to make the other person uncomfortable and feel like they did something wrong by having kids. But I think maybe even more than that, it's that we're just tired of defending ourselves, and we can sense that stuff coming because it always does. And so just if we can just avoid it, then it's like so much easier because we're just tired of defending ourselves. I feel like as I've gotten older, I just turned 38. Like, I don't necessarily get that question as much anymore. So people will ask if I have kids, and it's like, no, I don't. Thank God.
Yeah.
but but I think that like if you've decided, especially early on, that you didn't want kids, like in your early 20s or something, you probably got a lot of that pushback of like, oh, what if you regret it? All of the responses. So just feeling like we're tired of defending ourselves is probably another reason why it's like, just don't talk about it at all.
Definitely, I'm like, do I feel like having this conversation? And if I don't, I'll just brush it off and move on.
Exactly.
I'm 39, and so I've definitely gotten less questions the older I get now, whereas like in my 20s, get asked all the time by everybody and was told all the time I would change my mind, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Oh,
it's
yeah. That's
definitely
another
nice.
one.
So it's nice. I'm like, I'm glad. I'm glad I'm finally getting to the age where people just, they assume you don't want them or you can't have them or whatever, you know? So they just
They
stop
just assume
asking.
it's too late for you. I'm not going to try, which is like, yes, that's great.
Yeah, exactly. So, what's your favorite part about being child free?
Well, let me count the ways. Honestly, I think it's just that, like, I get to be my main focus. And I was gonna, like, apologize for how egotistical that sounds, but I'm not. I
No.
decided not to. And it's not just about, like, oh, I'm the best thing and I just want to focus on me. It's that personal development and making myself better and improving myself, learning more, learning new skills, getting better at stuff, getting stronger or faster, like whatever it is very appealing to me. Like I like doing that sort of thing. And so being able to have the time to do that sort of thing is probably my favorite part. I love not being responsible for anybody else except that little girl back there. But I just really love being able to wake up and be like, what can I do for me today? What can I learn today? What can I experience today? What can I discover today? And not feel like I don't have time to do that because it's fun to improve ourselves and learn about ourselves and be better people. So yeah, having the time to do that is probably my favorite. What's your favorite part?
I would agree. It's the freedom, which is kind of in line with what you're saying, the freedom of what I want to do, when I want to do it, having just the time. If today I feel like doing this, I'm going to go do this, or the time to do this podcast. I'm pretty sure if I had children, I wouldn't have the time to start a podcast. Even just in the small things, like after work, if I'm tired and I don't really feel like cooking much, guess what? We can just kind of throw a little something together and watch a show and chill out. And I don't have to worry, like you said, about taking care of little ones on top of it. I actually did an interview a couple weeks ago with a student journalist I think she's in the UK, and she asked me that question, what's your favorite part about being child free? Because she's interviewing parents and child free individuals for her write up. And so I told her it was freedom. And she said that was the most response, or she'd gotten that response from a majority of the women that she spoke to that were child free, is that they just love their freedom.
It's so valuable because then we can do whatever we want. Like it's absolutely a luxury. And it is absolutely a privilege to be able to have the freedom to do whatever we want. But at the same time, it's also a choice. And it's a choice that we've made, and we should feel empowered by that choice.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I'm so glad that we have the option to make the choice, and where we are in our culture and everything that comes with that. But it is definitely a luxury, and I'm glad that I and you get to participate in that.
Yeah. Shout out to all of the women who came before us that allowed us to get to a point in our society where we can be like, no, kids are not for me. Thank you.
Seriously. We kind of touched on this a little bit before we started recording. We're getting older, so people quit asking us if we're going to have kids. But then, kind of on the flip side, as I've gotten older, I've found it that it's harder to make friends, because when I was in my 20s, most of the people I was around didn't have kids, so it was very easy. You're all friends and you're doing all the things that 20-year-olds do together. But then as we all aged, I continued not to have kids and they started having children and getting into their family lives. And that's great. I'm happy for them. But it definitely changed the friendship, the dynamic of the friendship, because coming back to that freedom, I have a lot more availability in my schedule or just the ability to kind of do something last minute, whereas they might have to find a babysitter or something like that. So I found that it's definitely way more challenging now. Do you experience that as well, or have you found that to be the case?
Let's see. So my situation is a little different. I just moved from the West Coast to Wisconsin. Not just, it's been like 3 or 4 years now. And I had never been here. My fiance and I bought a house sight unseen. We knew nobody. And we also both work for ourselves. We both work from home. And so it's difficult just meeting people, period, because of the situation we're in, because of our age, because we don't have a reason to leave the house. So why would we? We really have to make ourselves. So I think my situation is a little bit extra difficult just because of that. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard to make friends in general at this age, especially like this is probably is location dependent, but like a lot of people I think at this stage in life, they just are like they're good with what they have. Like they have their friend group and they're good with that. They don't need to go make new friends. They don't need to explore new places. They have their life and they're happy in it. And so that's just what they do day to day, which is great. If that's your lifestyle and you're living that lifestyle, hell yeah. So that makes it difficult, but meeting other women our age who are child free feels like it's very difficult. I think one of the things that has been helpful is to go online and try to like like your local subreddit or like Facebook groups or something like that, because like women are talking about this more online than they are in person, probably for the reasons that we just mentioned, right? Where we don't want to bring it up because we don't want to get defensive. But I do have a lot of female friendships that I've had for like over a decade. And, a handful of those women also don't have friends. So I think I've been really lucky in that regard because I feel like I have a core group of friends that we've been together through really difficult times. We're still close. None of them live near me, which totally sucks, but I still have those relationships. So I think that being in this new situation in a new area has really helped me realize the value of those friendships too, and just to really focus on like keeping in touch with the friends that I do have, especially the ones who are child free, because we just connect on a different level.
For sure. And I'm actually now in my life in a similar boat because my husband and I are traveling. So we're going to areas where we don't know people usually. And so it's kind of the same thing. It's exactly what you're saying. It's hard because a lot of times you make friends through work. And if you don't have that avenue and you're in a new area where you don't know anybody, it's like, well, how do you meet people as an adult, especially if you're traveling or you're only there for so much time? It's not like, well, I can join a club or whatever activity and make friends that way. It's like, well, I'm only here for so many weeks or months and then I'm going to bounce. So it's definitely challenging. So I've done what you've done. I've gone online, and in the different areas that I've been to, I've been able to actually meet other child-free women and like meet up for a coffee or something, which has been really
Oh,
cool.
fun.
Uh,
Really, the podcast is just like a clever ploy to make new friends.
so you figured me out.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
What did they say? If you build it, they will come.
Yeah. No, that's so smart.
What advice would you give to somebody who might be like in their 20s that know they don't want to have children, but they're trying to get through that whole, like, you might regret it or you're going to change your mind? Like, what advice would you give to your younger self in those years or that age frame?
Okay, this is a little facetious, but like come up with good comebacks.
I like
Find
it.
some good comebacks. Like, what if you regret having kids? Like, I'd rather regret not having them than regret having them, right? Like things that you can say to, I don't know, make yourself feel better, but also get the other person to actually think about what they're saying, I think would have been really helpful for me instead of just feeling like I had to laugh it off because I was uncomfortable. It's also okay to say, like, that's a very personal and inappropriate question, and just leave it at that and just look at them until they're ashamed of themselves. Because, like, from a society standpoint, it's not an inappropriate question. Like we don't think as a society that's an inappropriate question, and that's why people keep asking it. So I think that if we can change the narrative a little bit, in each individual conversation, then that can be helpful. So yeah, find some good comebacks and just know that, like, if this is your choice, or even if you're undecided, your early 20s, you might just be undecided, like, that's okay. You have plenty of time to figure it out, and it's really nobody's business. But just know that, like, if you do decide to not have kids, you're not alone. There are millions of women who do not want kids. There's also a lot of women who have had kids and regret it. Right? So it's like there's also women who have kids and don't regret it, and they love their kids, but just know that you're not alone, and there's, like, a whole community of women who are in the same boat as you, and who hate that question too. That's what I would have told myself.
Like that. I do think culturally it's a question that people sometimes just ask because they don't know what else to say. It's kind of one of those small talk questions, but really when you look beyond the question, like, it is kind of inappropriate. Or I feel bad because I have a couple of friends that wanted children and haven't been able to have them. And imagine being that female and getting asked that question, "Oh, when are you gonna have kids?" Well, you don't wanna, like, expose the reason all the time or the medical history, whatever, of why you don't have kids, so it just puts them in this, I'm imagining it puts them in this really awkward position. So it would be good to change the narrative a little bit and maybe stop asking that question.
Yeah, or parents who have lost kids
Right. Oh,
too,
yeah.
It's just like, who knows what this question is gonna bring up, and that's why it's so personal. I mean, I think, like, do you have kids is probably a more reasonable question, because then it's like yes or no, and we can leave it at that, right? Kind of like, do you have pets? Yes or no.
Yeah.
But when it's phrased in a certain way, it's too personal, and it's unfair. It's an unfair question.
Especially for
Yeah,
a stranger, somebody you met 2 minutes ago.
exactly.
So, my final question for you today is actually a question that a previous guest left. They didn't know who it was being left for, so that it wasn't directed towards you. I just said, leave a random question. Their question was, what are you doing now that your 13-year-old self would be absolutely stoked about?
Oh my gosh. Okay, think that my 13-year-old self would be really proud of the way that I live my life, in terms of, I just decide I wanna do something, and then I do it. Like, when we moved here, for example, bought a house sight unseen, people were like, "Are you crazy? Like, are you at least gonna go visit the place first? What are you doing? There's nothing there for you. All your friends are here." But it just felt like the right thing to do. And by living my life in that way, we were talking about freedom earlier. I think a lot of people have freedom, but they also are too scared to use it. And I think 13-year-old me would be really proud of the fact that not only have I made choices in my life beyond, of course, the privileges that I have, that I'm able to have that freedom, but the choices that I've made that allow me to have the freedom I have, but then I actually do something with it. I think that she would be very proud of that. That is such a fun question.
I thought it was really great when they came up with that. I agree. Like, we do have a lot of privilege, again, just being born in America offers a lot of privileges to have some freedoms, but then actually being able to do something, like actually having the nerve to go and change and make a huge change, move all the way across the US or halfway across the US. And
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times we actually do have more freedom than we think. It's just that we're too scared to do it. But I think when we are audacious in making those decisions, and strategic in making those decisions, like, that's really how we get the most out of the freedom that we have, for sure.
well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I've really loved talking with you. I could have kept talking for hours, I think.
Likewise. Yeah, I know it's been an hour already, which feels crazy. It feels like not that long. So thank you so
Yeah,
much for
if
having me. This has been a fantastic conversation, and I appreciate just connecting with another child-free woman my age, of course, but also thank you for asking me so many great questions about branding and allowing me to share what I know about the subject that I'm just really passionate about. I appreciate you letting me use your platform for that.
you're welcome. I've learned a lot today, that's for sure. So I appreciate you
Yay!
sharing.
Good.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Life Outside the Default. If you would like to connect with myself or our guest, or be a guest and share your story on the show, please check out the show notes. You will find all of our contact information there. Thank you.